What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video, I will be showcasing the new and improved Celestial Nighthawk build. Now, if you didn't know, the Celestial Nighthawk got a buff this season, and it is now one of the highest damaging one-off supers in the game. It can one-shot champions even in Grandmaster difficulty Nightfalls, and on that fact alone, it makes it worth running. Because being able to quickly dispatch a champion with your super actually has huge viability in endgame content, and I will go more in depth on that in a minute, but before I do, let's look at exactly what the exotic does. It has the exotic armor perk Hawkeye Hack. Precision final blows reduce the cooldown of your super. Modifies Golden Gun to fire a single high damage shot. Targets defeated by that shot give you super energy and explode. So back in the day, this exotic only turned your marksman Golden Gun into a single high damage shot. And back in Destiny 2 Vanilla, that did decent damage. But thanks to power creep, that single shot was definitely watered down recently. They did buff it a couple years ago, but instead of buffing the damage, Bungie gave it the last part of the perk, where if you defeated a target, it gave you super energy back. This helped it, but it still wasn't great because the damage wasn't high enough to one-shot Grandmaster champions. I know this because I soloed a GM with it back in the day, and that was still its biggest issue. So with Season of the Wish, they gave it a 25% damage buff. Now, I don't know if it will still one-shot champs and GMs without Solar Surge, because this season Solar Surge is on every week, but for this season at least, it can. And we also have artifact mods that further increase its value, which I will get to later. But like I said, now it can one-shot GM champions, and when you one-shot them, you get 33% of your super back. So this helps you to have some really nice uptime on your super. And that brings me to the other buff that they gave it this season, where precision final blows reduce the cooldown of your super. The Destiny Data Compendium states that this is anywhere from 1.5 to 4.5% super depending on the enemy rank that you kill. So if you have a precision-based weapon, you can chain supers like crazy. In the background gameplay, I have some footage showing me pairing this build with the Bad Juju exotic pulse rifle, and I'm easily getting a super within a minute. This is a great weapon pairing, as Bad Juju also gives bonus super energy returns, and Overload pulse rifle is on the artifact this season. And it's also easy to get precision kills with, so you can double dip on the super return. Seriously, try this weapon out. You will be amazed at how many supers you have. There's a few other weapons that pair wonderfully with this build. The first being the Wishender exotic bow. This bow is great at landing crits, and it triple penetrates targets, so it also gives massive super energy return thanks to that. It has taken a backseat this season thanks to how easy it is to get Radiant and therefore have anti-barrier, but in the future, this is a great pick. In the energy slot, Polaris Lance is crazy good as usual, and Sunshot and Tiku's Divination also pair very nicely with this build. And then in the heavy slot, I like to run a machine gun for ad clear. You don't really need a high damage heavy because your super can do the heavy lifting on champions and bosses, so the machine gun is great for ad clear. But if you do want a bit more firepower, then the Apex Predator rocket launcher is a great choice, or a solar linear fusion rifle. Bonus to solar rockets because Overload rocket launcher is also on the artifact this year. So you will notice all those weapons were solar, and that is on purpose. So let's look at the aspects and fragments of this build and explain the playstyle. First off, you can run any dodge you like, and it is really situationally dependent. Like, I soloed the Hypernet Current GM with Marksman dodge because it reloads my machine gun quickly, but Gamblers can give you your melee charge back, which is hugely beneficial depending on the content and the playstyle. And Acrobat's dodge is nice to give you Radiant super easily, which will be beneficial in future seasons when it is harder to get Radiant than it is now. The melee ability is whatever you prefer, and I also switch that up depending on the activity, but I usually prefer Knife Trick for the fan blade knives. And then I strongly recommend a healing grenade, which I will get to shortly. For aspects, I run On Your Mark and Knock 'em Down. On Your Mark makes it so precision final blows grant you and nearby allies increased weapon handling and reload speed. And if you dodge, you get the max ×3 stacks. This bonus is really nice, and it also gives you 3 fragment slots, which is quite rare. And then I run Knock 'em Down, which enhances our solar supers. This makes our marksman Golden Gun last longer, and it also increases the damage of it when we are Radiant. And also while we're Radiant, any throwing knife kills we get will refund our throwing knife charge. So I think these aspects are the way to go. Gunpowder Gamble is fun and cool, but it can sometimes screw you over if you go to throw a healing grenade, and I don't like that as my healing grenade is often cast to save my life, so I'm often throwing it in a split-second panic situation to stay alive, where if I have Gunpowder Gamble, then I'll just blow myself up and die. So on to Fragments now, here's what I like to run. The most important thing in my mind is Ember of Empyrean. This allows us to extend the Radiant and Restoration effects applied to us as long as we're getting solar kills. So this is why we run healing grenades. Again, it is super easy to get Radiant this season, so it doesn't matter so much, but in the future, you will be able to extend your Radiant effects, which is free 25% damage. So in high-end content, what I like to do is throw down my healing grenade and then mow enemies down with a solar weapon like my machine gun, or even an exotic primary like Polaris Lance, and then I have 12 seconds of restoration, and it refreshes every time I get a kill. This allows you to play quite aggressively and take out adds. And the more adds you take out, the more super energy that you're getting. So that is the most important fragment. The next most important, especially for future seasons, is Ember of Torches, where powered melee attacks make you Radiant. Again, this can be extended by Ember of Empyrean, so you throw down a healing grenade and then use your throwing knife to get a kill. Now you have Radiant and Restoration going. And then just keep mowing enemies down with your solar weapons. The fixed odds solar machine gun is great for this, but a quick solar rocket into some adds will also do the trick. Dragon's Breath could be really good for that. And then just keep clearing adds with a solar weapon. Then we have Ember of Searing and Ember of Singeing. Searing gives you melee energy when you kill a scorched target, as well as makes a fire sprite which gives a chunk of grenade energy. And Singeing will reduce your class ability energy just for scorching a target. And then lastly, I have Ember of Combustion, which causes an ignition when you kill an enemy with your super. This also creates a fire sprite and grants plus 10 strength. This one is totally negotiable though, as Celestial already causes an explosion when you get a kill with it. But I just run it because. You can swap whatever you like here. So that covers the gameplay loop. Throw down your grenade to start resto, throw your melee for Radiant, then go to town with your solar weapons, and Restoration and Radiant will be up as long as you are getting kills. Then when a high health target comes along, pop it with your super. This super hits extremely hard now and is great on dungeon bosses. I put out a video showing how hard it hits on every dungeon boss, and it's honestly pretty crazy, so check that out after this video. I did forget the Phalanx Echo from Prophecy though for some reason in that video, so here is that clip. I also hit it with a Parasite for even more burst damage. So the artifact mods this season are actually crazy, and they enhance this build even further, so let's look at them real quick. From Whence You Came is a 5% buff to ability damage on Scorn and Taken, so this is awesome in things like Birthplace of the Vile or Hypernet Current or certain dungeons, as it is free super damage. Kindling Trigger causes your solar weapons to scorch enemies when you are Radiant. This has amazing synergy with Ember of Searing and Singeing, and it is free scorch damage from your solar weapons as well. Torch states while Radiant deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand or Stasis debuffs, so this has nice synergy with things like Slice or Chill Clip on your weapons. Flint Striker allows you to proc Radiant just for getting solar precision kills, which you should be doing anyways because precision final blows give you super energy. Heart of the Flame automatically gives you Radiant when you cast your super, so you don't have to worry about having Radiant when you pop your Goldie for that extra damage. Wished Into Being gives a bit of extra super energy when you get an ability kill when you are close to your super. This is niche, but it's still nice to have as it gives you even more super uptime, and this build is totally based around your super. And maybe the mod that makes it the most OP this season is Revitalizing Blast. This allows your super abilities to weaken targets, so you can throw a melee on an enemy before shooting your Goldie and you will deal 15% more damage. This mod is extremely strong with this build. And then lastly we have Raise of Precision, which is great to make ignitions on solar precision final blows when you are Radiant. And if you're a solo, obviously run solo operative. If not, then just run whatever you like. So these artifact mods juice this build up tremendously, but this build will still be great in future seasons. You'll have to rely more on Ember of Torches to get your Radiant, and you won't make as many ignitions thanks to Raise of Precision, and no debuff from Revitalizing Blast, but it will still be great. Onto the mods, on the helmet, I like to run Kinetic Siphon or Solar Siphon depending on what weapons I am using for my build. You can double up on Solar Siphon mods with Harmonic Siphon if it is based all around solar weapons. And then Heavy Ammo Finder is really good in higher end content, but in lower end content where enemies will easily die to your melee ability, then Hands On can help you get even more super energy. On the gloves, I like Harmonic Loader to load solar weapons faster. This build doesn't have much in terms of ability ad clear, it's all really weapon focused, so this comes in really clutch. I then run Focusing Strike and Impact Induction for class and grenade energy every time I deal damage with a melee. On the chest, run the resistance that applies to the activity. On the legs, I run a Solar Scavenger for my Solar Heavy, and then 2 Kinetic Surge mods. For some reason, 3 Kinetic Surge doesn't work with your Golden Gun, but 2 Surges do. So this buffs your Celestial Golden Gun a further 17%. So you can get more damage from Radiant, more damage from Kinetic Surge, and a 15% weaken from Revitalizing Blast. So your already strong super hits for even more damage. It's great. On the class item, I run double bomber for grenade energy when I dodge, and a time dilation mod on my cloak to make my armor charge last 15 seconds instead of 10. Lastly for stats, I obviously run 100 resilience for the damage resistance, and then I just try to have my stats as even as possible. Again, we have mods and fragments to help all our ability cooldowns, so you actually have surprising uptime on pretty much all of your abilities. And that is pretty much it for the build. I've always loved this exotic because I love high damaging supers and weapons in Destiny, so I'm happy to see it get the love it finally deserves. It's actually extremely viable in endgame now because it can dispatch a champion with ease from any distance. Again, do not underestimate how valuable this can be. Sometimes you have 2 champions on the field, so being able to take one out quickly and then only have one to worry about can be the difference between life and death sometimes. I also use this build in many solo dungeons this season and it performs beautifully, so definitely give it a try. It really helps shave off damage phases on all the bosses. Anyways, if you are still watching, then thanks so much for watching to the end. It means a lot. If you liked the video, then a like and subscription would be very much appreciated. Enjoy one-shotting everything with this build, and take care.